So in an earlier section of this course, we saw how to clone a project from GitHub using the command line. But in this video, let's do the same thing, but using IntelliJ. So in order to do this, we need to find a public repository on GitHub and then fork it first and then clone it. Now the reason that I want to fork the project first is that we want to use this same project for demonstrating the pull process later in this section. And to do that, we need write permission because we'll be modifying the project and adding files and adding changes to the project. And we can't do that for a public repository that we haven't got write access to. And if you recall, by default, when you're dealing with public repositories, you've only got read access. So it's a lot easier if we just fork a project that we're interested in, that puts it into our account effectively, and then we've got full access to it, and then we can make any changes we'd like. All right, so the first thing we want to do is find a project. Now we can use this repository search feature up here. Actually, what we'll do, we need to go back to the top because we don't want to search this repository. We want to search GitHub, all the repositories, and find something that we can use. So I'm just going to go and literally just do a search for Python. And the reason I'm searching for Python here is because we just happen to have used Python for the demonstration in this section of the course for IntelliJ. And I'm just going to look, well, I was going to look down here, but this first one here, you can see it's got 1,365 forks and 1,465 stars, and it's a Python project. So let's just use the very first one. We're not really looking for any particular code. We're just looking for something we can use as a demonstration here. That looks good enough to me. So let's come up here and click on fork, which, if you recall, puts a copy of that entire project. It forks it and makes it available in our project or in our account now. And you can see now we've got Tim Bichalka / Python. Python was the name of the project from this Geek Computers GitHub user. And you can see that it says forked from Geek Computers / Python. And we'll go back to the home page. You can see we've got this Python project and we've got the little fork icon to show that it has been forked. All right, so let's go back to Android Studio now. And what I'm going to do is close the Blackjack project we worked on in the previous video. Close that down. And what we want to do now is we want to check out from version control. So click on that and we're going to select GitHub because obviously that's our remote repository. And that's going to pop up a list of all the projects in our account. So you can see we've got a number there because I've been obviously working in this course in Android Studio, and we've got a number of files that we worked on in there, and also the earlier ones we did on the command line. But this one, let's look at that one, python.git. That's the one that we've only most recently forked into our account. I'm going to select that. And we've also got an option, where do we want this to be saved? And IntelliJ is giving us a default, which isn't going to go to my desktop. It's going to go somewhere else. And it doesn't really matter where we save it. In the Android Studio section of this course, I decided to put it on the desktop. But C uses Tim ID projects is fine. That's the default from IntelliJ. So I'm going to put it there. So it's going to put it there by default, but then also create a subfolder called Python. Bearing in mind, you can click on the ellipse over here if you want to navigate to any folder if you choose to not save it in the default. And that's it. So that's how we do it. And you can do this option here to click clone. So let's do that. And that's doing just that. It's cloning the project from GitHub onto our local computer, creating a local repository. And it's actually saying here, would you like to create an idea? That's an IntelliJ idea project for the sources. Yes, we absolutely do. So click on yes to that. Now, depending on the project that you're importing, different things will happen here. And whilst this is not like a learn how to use IntelliJ course or a learn how to program in Python, so I can't really help you too much with those things, at least in this course. We'll go through some of the basics here. Hopefully it should be pretty straightforward. So I'm going to leave the default option there. Click create project from existing sources. Click on next. It's just confirming the project name. Now this is the IntelliJ project, remembering that the previous option when we're cloning was just where we wanted to save the files. So we're now creating an IntelliJ project so that we can work with the files that have come from that repository. Because of course, bear in mind that they may not necessarily have been using IntelliJ for the editing of those Python files. They could have been using any editor. So we're creating a project for IntelliJ now. So click on next. And it's wanting confirmation as to where the scripts are, where the Python files are. So I'm going to leave that as its default option. Click on next. Now here we need to choose Python. So if you've got multiple SDKs, perhaps you've got a Java one there as well, a Java development kit set up, make sure you click on Python, assuming that you've selected a Python file when you fork that project. But earlier in this video, we did just that. We chose a Python project. So I'm going to select Python there, click on next. No frameworks detected, that's fine. Click on finish. And if we have a look over here now, we can see that we've got our files. We've got a heap of files there, which are all Python scripts. Notice this file in red, python.iml. The reason it's in red, well, that's an IntelliJ project file, and normally you wouldn't be including those or uploading those or adding them to a repository anyway. But if we wanted to add them, again, we could do that. Right click, select Git, and click on Add, but I won't do that now, because generally it doesn't really make sense to include those because they change so often. It means you'd be forever sort of having to commit files to a repository. And also in terms of being a developer anyway, it's generally frowned upon to include those sorts of files which are sort of specific to a local computer. You shouldn't really be putting those in a repository. And you can see here, obviously, IntelliJ is smart enough to create that file because it created that file for us automatically when we cloned the project. So just to confirm that we've got this working, let's just choose one of these files, logs. Right down the bottom, let's just put in a bit of code here just to make sure it works. I'm going to do print Tim's test. Click on OK there to keep IntelliJ happy. Let's actually right click that and click on run just to see that it actually works. And it's obviously, that's probably a bad example because I've chosen a location there that clearly doesn't exist. So I'll just quickly change this. And again, what I'm doing is I'm not teaching you Python programming. I just really want to just check that this is going to work. And we'll put, let's just try that. That should keep it happy. Run it. All right, so I'll actually undo all these changes. Let's undo that completely. Let's just choose another file. All right, so let's just come down here, choose this file, osinfo.py. Just right click it and run it. That's given us some output, so clearly that's working. All right, we didn't really need to do that. We didn't need to spend any time going through checking to see whether the scripts were working. But sometimes it can be a good idea to do that just to make sure that things are correct. But you can see IntelliJ here has created a project for us. But more importantly, we've managed to get that project and get it cloned from GitHub. And we've now got a local repository with that code on this computer now. The other thing we can do is just do an Alt-9 again. And again, if you're not sure what that command is on your operating system, View Tools menu, you can choose version control from there and it will show you the shortcut. But in terms of the version control, we can have a look and see what's happened here. Now this history is interesting because this is the commit history from the remote repository. And I'll just close that message there. Obviously there's been quite a few over time, so this is what like a real repository looks like. The other thing I wanted to show you there is you can see these changes here being made by multiple people. Very interesting, you can see that multiple people are involved in this project. Going back some time, it goes right back there, you can see to 2011. And you can see here some of the other changes. We'll look at maybe talking about these a little bit more, some of these changes and how they apply in terms of branches and merges and so forth. But the point here is that IntelliJ has got full integration of Git. It does give you a lot of information, so you can even click on a particular button here to find out more about it as well. So it's quite fascinating actually getting a project out of GitHub, and there's particularly one like this that has been around and being used by a number of users and been around for quite some time, just to see what's happened and how things work, you know, like in a real world scenario instead of having, as we've done, just basically a test project with only a few files. So again, we can look in here under local files, local changes rather, unversioned files. Well, these are the files that IntelliJ has created when we cloned the project. So you could decide whether some or all of those should be as part of the repository if you then decided to start pushing back changes back into GitHub. All right, so I'm going to finish the video there now. In the next video, let's talk about pulling changes from GitHub back into our local repository. So I'll see you in the next video.